and now I'm down after the return. I'm going back up to the battlefield. So this is base on and back to the front line. At the end of 1950, all of North Korea returned to become occupied by the North Korean and Chinese forces. Again, the city of Seoul was occupied and the enemy forces had continued driving south until their supply lines were stretched. Thousands of United Nations reinforcements were brought in to stop the invaders south of Daegu and almost to Pusan. In the spring, when the weather began to improve, the 1st Marine Division was reassigned back to the front lines in central Korea. We left base on and drove by convoy for numerous days. Each evening we would stop, set up a temporary camp, and then in the morning reload and move on. On several occasions we drove in the warm rain. So that less of our clothes would get wet, we would strip down to our underwear and wear only that. If we were lucky, an abandoned building we would find to sleep in rather than be have to put up our tents. Our company was usually assigned to stand guard duty all night, every night. In 4-hour shifts, each of us were assigned to a specific location around the perimeter. Then, in complete darkness, we were to watch and listen for any intruders. I found that I could stay awake better by eating candy during that duty, but it also I found that I gained about 20 pounds during a short time. Our overnight camps were mostly in the open countryside and quite vulnerable. Many times we would locate a large building or use a school building with playgrounds where we could park our equipment. If we stayed close to the main road, the supply trucks going to the front would pass in long convoys, keeping us all awake as they rumbled past. During this movement, there was a random times where we would stay 1 day or 2 in one spot. Once it was a school complex in a small abandoned village. At one placement, we repaired bridges on the main road over the creek for 2 weeks. Another time, we stayed in a large sand and gravel flat across the river from a tank battalion. That was the first time that I remember seeing some helicopters picking up tanks and moving them to the front lines, which was not far ahead of us. During another one of these stops, I was able to get closer to the front lines and visit Bob Durkheimer, an old friend's brother, who was with the Marine Artillery Company. It was interesting to go to the battlefield and see the added security measures that they used up there. Also, as we were closer to the front lines, we would often see enemy soldiers without their weapons walking away from the battle toward the rear lines. The forward infantry units would disarm the prisoners and send them walking, trusting that an outfit that was collecting POWs would gather them in due time. Our shore party battalion soon was more frequently used as an engineer unit to repair roads and bridges and to clear staging areas along the route to the front. It meant staying in one place for longer periods of time, and if possible, it was a bit more permanent. Usually we stayed in what were called squad tents, which housed 6 fellows. The weather still had an influence on our daily routines. One time we were set up in a sloping field where when a heavy rainstorm hit the area, the water could not sink into the ground fast enough, so ran down the hill and literally through our camp. At the time, we were sleeping on cots in squad tents. Now, all our equipment, including our pack and our boots, had to share a cot, and then we all slept all wrapped around each other. An ocean of water ran in the front door of the tent, then down through and out the back wall. This went on for only a couple of days. At At a later bivouac, we set up in an open field that was deep mud. I mean, really deep mud. It was so thick and deep that it went up between your ankles and your knees with each step. After starting to assemble our tents, some live ammunition was found, and everybody quickly stopped and stood very still. A safe path was located and marked out of the field, and we waited for a while. What do we do next? An ordnance team came to reconnoiter the area and found no more ammo. By this time, we had moved to another campsite down the road. This only happened that one time, praise the Lord. Now, just wait a minute or two. I changed my tempo here. This was this morning, you talk about in the night. I got this morning, wrote it down. Now, just a minute or two, I have one more event that I'd like to share. In the spring of 1950, a decree came out from the 1st Marine Division medical people that a malaria scare had developed there in Korea, and that all personnel must begin immediately taking quinine tablets to meet that epidemic. Webster defines quinine as a bitter, white, crystalline substance used especially to treat malaria. But I believe that is a magnificent understatement. The tablets that we were to receive were big, about the size that you would feed to a horse that was sick. The word was spread through the whole outfit that quinine tablets were about the worst tasting thing in the whole wide world. We were all soon able to agree with that assessment. Now back to the general order that stated all personnel were to daily receive medication. Beginning that day, each morning after breakfast, we were to line up with our canteen, which is a metal cup with a handle on it, and receive our allotment. We each received one quinine table in one hand and advanced to fill our canteen with about 6 ounces of water from the water trailer. Then we were to move forward and in the presence of medical witness, swallow the pill, followed quickly by the water. It became rather routine until one morning, while I was not thinking too clearly, I put the quinine tablet in my mouth, then threw back my head and poured the cup of water down the front of my shirt. And I remember this. As the tablet melted in my mouth, I turned to run back to the water trailer for a refill. But the program didn't allow for refills, so I had to explain why I needed a cup of water. All the while, this horrendous, ghastly tasting, mind-boggling tablet was continuing to melt in my mouth. Of course, the fellows in line had seen what happened, so they were enjoying my dancing the jig. I finally was able to win the victory by another cup of water and partially alleviate the great discomfort. You can be very sure that I didn't let that happen again to me. So my advice to you is to be careful if you have to swallow one of those terrible quinine tablets to prevent you from getting malaria. I almost wonder if malaria is really that bad. I'm rewriting most of this because I'm very factual, and now I'm trying to put some life in it. So,
I was wondering where you got the candy bars. You said that if you ate a candy bar, you could stay awake?
Candy bar was available. I don't think
they were available pretty readily.
We didn't have any money, so they must have been handout stuff,
okay.
Or maybe what people got. It's a good question. I don't remember where we got it on.
Yeah.
I ate enough to.
You get some of your sea ration, didn't you?
I don't know if there's candy in there. I don't remember.
Usually Hershey bar in there.
Like in the World War II, those rations, there was always some sweet.
We didn't have a lot of sea rations. We really ate. We had a kitchen